Hello again, Twitch friends, and welcome back to the third session in our cooperative world building stream. I am Roosbliz, and today we're going to be talking about non-player characters. What makes a good player character? And then we're going to work on a few together to add to our world. Let's jump straight in, shall we? Disgusting. Hello, hello. It is Rube. It is a very, very pleasant evening. Thank you everyone for joining, as always. You warm the heart. I want to say thank you to everyone who's followed in the past week. We've had some new followers. I see Mrs. MLG in the chat, so hello, thank you for stopping by. Skelly Bob 1, there's a new one. Not sure who that is, so that's exciting. And Slothrates, who I believe we refer to as Slothrate over at Friendly Eddie's channel. So thank you for following. The support is much appreciated. Where are we this week? So for those of you who were here last week, you remember we've come quite a long way in building our world now. In just 2 short sessions, that's it. It feels like so much more. We've laid some pretty solid foundations. We've worked on a pantheon of gods for our world. Mighty Lancer, please, thank you very much for following. For anyone who doesn't know, Mighty Lancer Games, the best local game store in the country, in the world perhaps. Happens to be where I spend most of my working time these days. mightylancergames.co.uk. Fantastic, reasonably priced, all that. Don't get commission, saying that because I like the place. Where was I? after that desperate shill. Hello. Yeah, so we created in session 1. So we had a session 0. I was interviewed by a friend of mine, so that you can get an idea of who I am as a DM. Session 1, we worked on a pantheon of gods for our world. Some quite interesting developments there. We've gone for like a group of demigods that Ultron up into one major deity, the creator. And last week, in session 2, we worked on a little bit of a society. So at the moment, we've gone with the idea that there's a kingdom in its death throes as powers start to be taken over by we keep saying this is something that needs addressing. We keep saying empire, but I suppose it's a republic, right? For anyone who actually has watched any Star Wars film, right? Yeah, so we've got a Senate that's slowly taken over power. The king is kind of okay with, but because I guess he's arrogant enough to believe that he's still got the power, even though there's a Senate that's calling all the shots. And this week, we're going to work together on adding some notable NPCs to our world that we're going to use later on to plan our first few sessions. But we want to work on the notable NPCs for our society. We sort of started that with adding a king and what have you. But we want to get like a wireframe set out for notable NPCs that are going to be important later down the line, and then focus on some local ones to our starting town that we can have our players interact with early on. And we're going to talk about what things are going to help us in those NPCs to run our first few sessions, because those NPCs are going to be instrumental in shaping our players' view of the world, as they're the first people they come into contact with. They're going to be very, very important. Just going to catch up because I've just monologued massively. Yeah, everyone's pleasant day. Quaint, beautiful. Yeah, the world's local. It is very local. So this brings me on to quite an interesting point. I've been trying to add some more Twitch features to the stream. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm trying to work it out as I go, but I've added one nifty feature. If someone can type in !doc in the chat, you should get a link to our world building document here that you can then go and read along. Oh god, I didn't want to do that. I did really want to do that. Bear with me while I sort that out. So that should give you all access to this document, so that you can not only read along, but it's important because I want people to be able to name parts of our world, right? And I've color-coded parts of this document I've highlighted things in green that are already named and things in blue that we think require a name. So at any point, anyone can look at that document, and if you decide you want to name one of our pantheon of gods, just drop that in chat, see what everyone thinks of your name, and we can add it to the global document. Obviously, this is like an open source. Anyone can utilize this themselves, and there will ultimately we'll have a full campaign laid out in this document as well for you to use. But you don't have to use it verbatim. You can take it away and chop it and change it as you please. So that's there for anyone who wants to use it. I'm just going to confirm that works, to be honest, because not really tested. The link works. Fantastic. So obviously I just closed Chrome like a fool. So I'm just going to open that back up again. But talk amongst yourselves while I do that. I did say last week that I want to start most weeks with a little bit of a user submissions type deal, where now we've got access to this document. At any point, any of you can, if you have a muse over breakfast, you think I've got a good name for our total god, right? Make a note of it, mark it down, and then you can come back and let us know in chat on next Sunday or now, and we can discuss new names for things, right? So now's your chance, really. If anyone's got any names they want to add to the document right now, then shout them out. So for those of you who are new, we've got very little names because I kind of want to leave that open for as we pick up more and more viewers. I want people to be able to name things, right? We don't want to take up all the names straight away. But our starting town is called Sunnybrid. It's a coastal fishing town that is in the process of being taken over. The control of the town is being taken over by the Senate, and we've decided it's quite an impoverished town. And there's the reason for it being taken over as one of the last settlements on our map is because of its distance from the capital and its relative low importance to people in power, because it's just an impoverished town. And we decided our civilians, our mere peasants who live in the town, are generally quite optimistic about the change, because they believe, how can things get worse, right? But there's a lot of a lot of positive feeling about the Senate taking over in the most part. But we've sprinkled that with a little bit of doubt that we have like partisan nobilists, right, who have formed groups who aren't so happy about the change. There's always going to be people who are opposed to change, and that's intentional. We want our players to have that. We want that like diametric opposite, because for a start, it's going to create a tension in the campaign. That's the whole point. Later on down the line, we might have a civil war. We might be on the brink of a civil war type situation. So it's going to add an interesting little wrinkle to our storytelling, which is going to be useful for creating drama. And also, we'd sort of noticed that it would be nice in a session 0, if we're throwing our players into this world, we can have the group discuss, do they want to go down we've kind of made the road fairly obvious that players are going to want to be pro-Senate, right? And that's kind of through chat that we've had as a group. We've very much written the Senate as the good guys, right? But we've created this situation where if our players decide they would actually rather play a campaign where they're helping the king return to power, it's very easy to flip that on its head and change the attitudes of our NPCs to allow the king to be a good guy. And there's more options in that we could potentially lead our players down the garden path and have them be like betrayed further down the line and what have you. So it's nice and open. It's going to give you as a DM, potentially a first time DM, a lot of freedom down the line to write the story in your own way, and you can add these twists and turns to excite your players as you wish. So no one's adding anything. So I'm guessing we haven't had any We haven't had any late night epiphanies about names that we want to give any of our deities or anything, which is fine. It just leaves us more naming opportunities in the future. So moving on to this week, we are here to discuss NPCs. As I said earlier, we want to. There are certain Chad. Who would you name Chad? If you're adding a name, like, let me know who, because there's there is a bit of a delay with chat. I don't know for people who are new. There's enough of a delay that it makes it really awkward to have like a direct conversation with someone. So like if you can include a thing. No offense, Pontus. Just I could do with a like. Or unless you just really like the name Chad, and we can just name anyone Chad. Yeah, so I've completely lost my train of thought, sir. So well done to you, sir. Yeah, there are certain characters who we've kind of identified while we were working on society for our world that probably needs to have some kind of structure to the character. Chad Chadsworth, even better. And we're gonna address those today and try and add some detail to the character, and then, but mostly we're going to want to populate our starting town with probably a Goliath. Yeah, the Goliath god, I'm guessing. Chad Chadsworth. It goes in, it goes in. None of these names are set in stone, and we're very much. I'm going to finish my thought, and then I'm going to come back. Right. So we're going to want to populate our starting town with NPCs to help our players pick a direction at the start of the game, and we're going to talk about how we're going to make NPCs that help us as a DM, kind of structure the first few sessions of our campaign, and so that's quite important. And it kind of that plays into that idea of like we've got these higher level NPCs that we need to flesh out, that we need to like wireframe, and then these like lower level characters that are going to be closer to our players at the start of the campaign need to be more fleshed out. That plays into a theme that came up a few times last week where we discussed the idea of like the things we plan being more concentrated towards the start of the campaign. So we've decided we're going to start in Sunnybrid, which is the very bottom settlement on our map. If we're starting there, we want to have a lot of NPCs there, and we want to have a lot of detail about the town there. And when we were talking about society last week, obviously we try and keep the streams to 2 hours. We devoted most of our time to there, and then we talked about the capital city, which is up here, a little bit because it's very important to the storyline. And after that, we added a little bit of detail to these two, the next closest cities on the map, because they're the next most likely place that our players will go. But we spent far less time talking about those cities than we did this main settlement, because your players might ask questions about those cities, but until you think your party are ready to go there, it's not as important to have all the details about what day's market day in the city and things. That those details we can leave out until later on in the process when we need to know them. So we're going to do the same thing with NPCs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We're going to focus most of our attention to Sunnybrid, and then the couple of characters that our players might ask about in the first few sessions, and then we're going to populate our characters out from there outwards. We don't need to know who is the mayor of the town in the top left corner of the map, because it's going to be a long while before our players get there. And as a DM, if a player does ask you that question, they ask for a name, you can make up a name on the fly, write it down, and then you've got later on when you do need to give that character more detail, you've only given them a name. That's not going to stop you making them good, bad. You can still play around with that character as much as you like. You've only given that minimal detail. So back to Chadsworth. So again, I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible for potential first time viewers. So if I'm going over things again, just bear with me while I go over old ground. One of the things that I discussed as a personal goal for this stream at the start in our session 0 interview is that I want to create a community of people who can discuss DMing, and we can use the community to work together to all improve, right? And that's why I'm here. We're going to build a world together, and I'm going to share the knowledge that I have about the game, which I agree is not limited, but like it's not exhaustive. And I'm here to learn as well. So I want it to be a collaborative effort. And if anyone ever disagrees with anything I'm saying, then by all means let me know, because this is an open forum. So one of the things that I'd identified myself as something I want to work on as a DM is the idea of letting the players determine the characteristics of a game. I have a tendency to get very like into the world that I'm creating and hyper focused on building a story. And it's important to remember that you want to build a game that speaks to the players, right? And in almost perfectly, we've got a situation with this stream where we're getting a lot of ideas from the chat that are like, we've got a lot of like campy, kitschy comedy coming in, right? Like we want to call a god Chad Chadsworth, and that is a perfect opportunity for me to work on that aspect of my gameplay. That if we want to call our Goliath god Chad Chadsworth, right, that sounds silly and what have you, but if that's what the players are going to get the most out of in their game, then do it, right? There's no again, I have a tendency to take things too seriously, so it's not a name I would have come up with, but if that's what the players are going to respond to, then let's go right ahead, right? So if you yourself are sat there thinking, well, that's, this is a little weird. Why are we calling our Goliath god Chad Chadsworth? That's exactly why, right? If you were to take this document and run your own campaign with it, and you sat down on session 0 and established that the players you're playing with also are more inclined to take their game a little bit more seriously, then you chop and change this to suit your needs, right? Let's do away with the funny names. Let's not have our king be called Reich Flair, right? Let's give him a more serious name. We can call him Tiberius, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and chuck in Chad Chadsworth as a name for our Goliath demigod. Chad Chadsworth. Why not? Oh. Chad Chadsworth. There we go. Well done, chat. We're in. The god of heavy petting. Right Flair is the only non-negotiable. Yeah, it's non-negotiable for me. Is Right Flair. There's no way Right Flair goes. I'm changing him to Right Flair the second though, and this is something I've actually thought about a lot. So we had this totally by coincidence. We had this situation where our king, whose name is Reich, became the third, right? And while I'm not so, especially in this situation where we're going with a lot of kitschy comedy, right? A lot of on the nose kind of comical naming conventions and things. I don't really mind the fact that we've ended up with a third Reich as the bad king, but my only concern with that is that because we have this situation because we have this idea that we might want our players to be open, we might want our players to have the option to work for the king and have the king be the good guy in our story. I don't want to a name like that very much railroads your players down to it's like you're forcing it down the neck that the king's the bad guy, right? So I've changed that. Chadsworth has the form of a Goliath. Could be a gnome, and they worship him for good luck. Our gnome deity's already got our gnome deity has already got a name though. Is either Antonius or Declanian. This is changing though. So we have our halfling and gnome twin gods, who used to be a single god, who were split in two as a punishment, right? Again, you know, this is kind of, we've got our two short gods where you were once one god in a trench coat kind of idea, and we're split in two for being rascals, which I quite like actually. It's quite an interesting, like, these like kind of these kind of tropey like ideas that are very easy for our players to pick up on when you're explaining to them like a whole new world not doing that again, a whole new world to absorb it all, right? That when you've got these like things that seem a little bit on the nose and a little bit tropey, it makes it a lot easier for them to absorb, because they're ideas that they've already had in their heads at some point. They're just applying a new concept to it. Nothing to say that Goliaths can't worship a gnome. They don't realise there's a gnome because they're very... So we'd agreed early on that so we've got a pantheon of gods that have like a domain and are patrons of a race, but that we didn't want our races to be solely limited to worshipping the god that's their patron. We want there to be an overlap. You'd find that 50% of humans would worship the human patron god, but there's 20% there that would worship like across the spectrum, and all the races are aware that they're like in their perception is that they're siblings, right? So it wouldn't be. It's kind of like it's like a Greek pantheon, right? You'd have a god that you believe you light a shrine to on your hearth or whatever. You'd have like a main god that you think is like your patron, but that doesn't mean you don't believe in the other ones and don't worship them. But you would have some crossover where certain members of a race would worship an entirely different god as their like main deity. Cool. So with all that out of the way, that's like half an hour's worth of sort of catching us up. But today's main topic is NPCs. So let's jump in. I said last week, I explained a little bit about my personal process for creating NPCs, and I have here a little pack of. Let's move that so we can see that this isn't hideously like out of focus and stuff. I have a pack of Magic the Gathering cards, right, which is like my go-to. I've been through a load of like commons and stuff, and have found a selection of humanoid and other species that match D&D, and they're just. I use these for like a physical description. So again, there you go. That's not awful. One of the things that I don't personally like to do when creating a character is come up with a physical description, because even using I have experienced in the past that when you use the D&D, they have tables for rolling physical traits and stuff. You do end up covering ground and having duplicates, which when you have duplicate like aspirations for a character, things that aren't like tangible, it's not as big a deal, because NPCs don't introduce themselves as a man who has been wronged in the past and is seeking revenge. That's like something they have to discover for themselves. But when you introduce two NPCs as having a hook nose, you very quickly like, oh, they're the same. This is the same person. Those tables have very limited options in them. as hard as Wizards of the Coast try, I imagine. And I find I've tried a lot of things in the past, and this is my kind of go-to. Have you got any Thraves? I hope so. I don't know if there is one in here. I think personally, if I had a Thraben Inspector in my little collection of potential NPC descriptions, I will have used it in your campaign. There's not one in here. There's a Dauntless Cathar there. There you go. That's a very similar looking character. Yeah, so in my experience, this is the best way to. I don't like writing. I'm not an author, and I don't. And when a human tries to manufacture like physical appearances, you have a tendency to pull from your own experience, and you end up describing NPCs that look like people you know, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can create situations in games where people could easily be offended if a likeliness of them has become a bad guy, for instance. So, I think for me, it takes a lot out of the process to have these. So, what I do is I'm using this is my folder for my main campaign, and in here I have an NPC folder, and I have comment cards like this one that when I need to create NPCs, I cut. Oh, here we go. I cut the image off of a magic card and sellotape it to the back of a description of their mental attributes, and then I can use this on the back to make notes of interactions they've had with the party. And I find that really easy to keep track of who's who and what they look like. And when it comes to describing a character to your party, you can literally look at the back of this card and describe the person on the back. And that kind of ensures that I've got a wide range of characters who don't all have the same hook nose. So there you go. That's my hot tip of the day. And because I always have this with me when I'm DMing, this little pack of cards. If I need to create an NPC on the fly, I can write down on a comment on one of my report cards, what are they called? My note cards. There's a word and I can't remember it. I write down on my card anything that I've mentioned to the players about them, so I don't forget that I've given them that attribute, and then just pick the top card, and this is what they look like now. And I can sellotape those two together at a later date, and I've now got an NPC that will consistently look the same and have the same characteristics. Cue card. That is exactly the word. Thank you, T. Kiernan. You are my saviour. Unfortunately, you were too late to stop me from looking like an idiot, but I appreciate your input. Yeah. So I'm not going to focus today. And that's important to note because I think it's a good tip, as I'm inclined to do because it's my idea. But that's when we start to develop our NPCs. I'm not going to focus on physical appearance. I might make a few comments because going through these cards, even there are characters that you look at who you would expect to be an evil aligned character, and then look at this, and someone who's a rogue, right? I wouldn't just randomly choose these. I would flick through and find one that looks right, because your good and evil characters are going to have different appearances, right? So we might make some assumptions about what people look like if we've decided that they're sinister, for instance. But I won't be talking about appearance in this because it's something that I think is much easier done with my pack of magic cards later on, and it'll also let our players, other users of this document, create their own. So if you don't have magic cards, as not everybody does, message me. I've got millions. No, that's a joke. Don't do that. But I do have millions. You can literally. So for a start, there's a on the Wizards of the Coast. I think it's Gatherer, isn't it? The Gatherer website is a database of Magic cards. So all of the artwork for these cards is somewhere online where you can copy them and download them. And provided you're using them for personal use, that's absolutely fine, right? So you can go there. That's a massive database of hundreds of thousands of bits of fantasy art that are in a similar style. Because funnily enough, Wizards of the Coast owns Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons IPs. So the art styles are very similar for both games. So there's hundreds of thousands of bits of artwork already done for you with a like Mortal Realms kind of aesthetic to them. Or failing that, just googling like fantasy or medieval RPG characters or whatever, and just see what you can find online, and download them, whatever, print them off. Stationary buff, cue card, yeah. So no, Pontus, there's not a Thraves in there. I was actually going to look while I was in here and see if, but then again, I cut the card up to make the cue card. So would you want me to cut a Thraven Inspector in half? You know? There's so much value there, and you'd be leaving it on the table. I'm looking at the names on the front to find Thraven Inspector, as though that's ever going to happen. I don't think there is. No, there's not. There's not one in there anyway, which I'm a little bit surprised about. But then again, we had this. We're going wildly off topic now. We had a problem, didn't we, during Shadows over Innistrad, that for some reason I couldn't pack a Thraven Inspector early, even though they were common. So I probably only have like 4 in my collection and wouldn't want to waste any. I've only got a single placer. So there you go. That's why there's no Thraves in there. But you could in fact have all of your NPCs look like Thraven Inspector if you wanted. So I think what would be handy is big fan. I am too. Not as much of a fan as Pontus is though. So I think what would be quite fun and quite interactive to do first of all is for us to put together. We can put together a list of NPCs that we want to create, and then go about creating them. So we've already got. I'm shuffling cards now. So I definitely shouldn't be doing that because that noise is probably horrific. We have, in terms of characters that we have identified, we've got a general, a current or former general who currently governs the city to the northeast of Sunnybrid. This one here. That guy needs a name, or that lady needs a name. I think we never decided who is in charge of the city to the northwest. So there is a leader of some kind who needs a name. But other than that, it's a case of creating a list of NPCs that we think should be created for Sunnybrid. And I'm going to help us get that started because we're all here to learn, right? So we've got a general, and we have a potential governor of some kind for the city to the northwest, right? Governor, yes, of course. Let's start looking at the obvious ones. We're gonna have an innkeeper in Sunnybrid, right? Have to. This is D&D. How can we possibly not have a friendly local innkeeper for Sunnybrid? We talked. So I think it was Ali last week who suggested the potential for a. Again, we're not going to railroad our players into this. It's just an option for them to choose on session 0. But because we're a harbour town, right? We had the idea that our party could have arrived to Sunnybrid by boat. In which case we want at least one like captain want a captain of that potential vessel. And even if our players don't decide they don't want to have arrived by boat, it's nice to have this. It's nice to have this bank of a boat, because at some point they will go to the harbour and they'll want to speak to someone. And if we've created like if we've created a captain and a first mate for a fishing ship, and then like one random sailor, yeah, who all work together on this boat and know each other. Dockmaster, that's a very good one. Someone the players would arrive to the docks and they would want to know a merchant store, yeah, a merchant storekeeper, right? If there's anything we know about D&D players, it's that the second they get some coin, they're going to want to buy equipment. Jolly Jack's General Goods, run by me. We're away. We're away already. Look, it's Jolly Jack's General Goods. Mad Jack. Yeah, so these are very good examples of places our player characters are going to want to go to immediately when they arrive in, whether your players are new or veterans of D&D or any other RPG system. They're gonna want to find somewhere they can buy equipment. They're going to want to go to an inn to ask questions, right? We should probably have a market. We did decide that we were a harbour town with a market, so let's throw in a couple of there's obviously the fishmonger, right? There's a fishmonger. There's a greengrocer there. It's always nice to have like a market stall of selling oddities, right? Something to bait your characters into spending money on an item that's completely worthless, right? Like a monkey paw or something that's not actually going to do anything. There's someone shady that hangs around Sunnybridge. Bet she deals with the birds. Yeah, a vicar. Fishmonger. Phyllis. Yeah, so there's going to be a smuggler, right? I don't know if that's exactly where you're going, but we've got some shady goings on down the docks. It's always possible to find someone who can smuggle you something in or out of town. A town drunk. That's where, yeah. So we're gonna, yeah. So let's, in order, we need some sort of, not necessarily a vicar, like a priest or someone. We might have a cleric who wants to visit the local church, right? So let's have a holy man of some kind, and a town drunk, obviously. Town drunk. Although in some campaigns, the town drunk ends up being one of the player characters, which is always nice. Looking at you, Ali Scarlet. Senate recruiter. Yeah. So. Getting more specific, so we've decided that Sunnybridge is in the process of being handed over, controls being handed over to the Senate. So I want to include, because we're alluding to the idea. Obviously, we're not there yet. When we start planning actual sessions, we'll cover it in more detail. But we're alluding. Wanyola. See? Wanyola. Why not? Every time as well, it always properly derails what I'm talking about. Yeah, so we're alluding to this idea that our players are going to very quickly be faced with this fork in the road where they're deciding whether they want to be pro-Senate or pro noblist, right? Pro royal family, and that gives we've already created a very nice central tension in the story there, and we've got a microcosm of that in our town. So we've got the Senate forces arriving to take over, and that gives us the opportunity to have we can for instance have a local garrison that are the King's Men, and a local garrison of Senate forces that are sort of in the process of like handing power over, and whether or not there's like whether or not we have friction there is gonna it's gonna be dependent on the DM. But I would just throw that straight in my players' faces and say let's have there be friction immediately. The pumpkin patch. Yeah, pumpkins. We decided pumpkins were a theme, didn't we? Pumpkin patch. The pumpkin patch. Pumpkin patch in. So pumpkin patch inn. That's not, the innkeeper isn't called the pumpkin patch inn. That's the name of the inn. But I would hope that'd be obvious. They do believe in the pumpkin gods. Yeah, like didn't we decide the human demigod, like the human patron demigod, is like can be construed as being very pumpkin focused. So yeah, so we have a noblest garrison, a garrison of king's forces phased out. So we could have like a captain, right? Have a captain of that, and then like I guess would it be a captain again? You know. But then maybe they're a higher rank because the Senate's forces are being deployed. Maybe there's like someone who's a higher rank who's arrived in the town to oversee the handover, but isn't going to stick around. So let's just put like captain or higher of. So, and that's going to be like that is going to be a Republic task force, right? That have been given the task of like handing over Republic task force. Gorgeous. I love how we've kind of like naturally converged on like a very Roman, Greco-Roman, like maybe even Byzantine, like naming structure for a lot of this stuff, and it's like it's happened subconsciously. Where is he? Gorgeous. Oh. Taste without formatting, please. Gorgeous. Lovely. Yeah, the others. Yes, so we had the where is it here? The city to the northwest is like a mercantile metropolis, right? It's like a very liberal city. Like I was considering whether it should even have like whether it should even have like a specific ruler, because we talked about the idea that like a larger than average percentage of the Senate have come from this way because it's that like free thinking, like I don't know. I'm thinking a lot about Moulin Rouge, right? It's just like this crazy like socialist like haven, and I wonder if that city should reflect that and not have its own single person in charge, like whether it should have its own like council. Yeah, I like that. Oh, coffee, lovely stuff. World building fuel. It's just here, isn't it? This is the only place we've. So we're like, yeah, I'm gonna put it down here actually. So we're gonna have to give it a name sooner or later because liberal city ruler. That kind of wants to be appeared, doesn't it? Liberal city ruler who'd definitely be head of a council. And she was like voted in, right? Elected. Yeah, there's a word for that. An elected official. pacifist. Almost definitely a pacifist. Yeah. The whole point of the Senate and like the Republic and stuff is to overthrow a monarchy that achieved its position through force, right? Council that defers to her due to her previous decisions. Yeah, like I can see her being a member of the council who they've all decided should just be given like sole custody of the city, with them as just like an advisory board kind of thing, because she's been so good at making decisions in the past that just a real woman of the people, you know. And goes without saying, this guy or gal, the general, absolutely detests her, for sure. There's definitely friction there. Yeah, so we wanna like circling back, we wanna have a microcosm of that in Sunnybrid, so that our players are immediately faced with that like ultimatum. It's like they don't need to make a decision here, but they're immediately aware that there's a decision there to be made. Like how world building always comes back to Skyrim, right? Always comes back to Elder Scrolls. But like how early in I don't know, I don't actually remember this, but I'm sure Rob will be able to give me an answer. How early in the game? Oh no, it's immediately, isn't it? I do know. How early in the game does Skyrim confront you with the idea that there's like Stormcloaks and Imperials? It's literally like the first decision you make is there's two blokes going, come with me, right? And you have to decide, do you want to go with the rebels or the Empire? So yeah, like the decision you make there doesn't have to inform your entire gameplay, right? But it is interesting to make them like give you their initial thoughts, and that helps us. That's almost coincidentally that helps you as a DM write more sessions, because that first decision is going to help you work out like which path your players are most likely to go down. Female general. Let's have some powerful women early. Yeah, why not? Let's not feel like we're doing it because we have to, though. Let's not make a deal about it. It just feels natural. Maybe I can't say that. Yeah, so if you're doing that, I kind of want to make this man. Stick with Imperial Guard or Stormcloak boy. Yeah, like it's immediate. It's going to help you. It's going to help you again as a DM. The earlier you get an idea of which direction your players are going to go, the better. And it's almost guaranteed that they'll make a decision on day one and then change their minds in session 2. That's going to happen. But the 2 times out of 10 where they stick to what they originally decided they'd do, you're going to be prepared. And that's all you can hope for as a DM, is to be that little bit more prepared every session. So I think this is a good list of NPCs for Sunnybrid, right? This represents quite a nice like varied list of potential encounters that they can have, right? And in my experience, this should cover most of the places that they're going to want to go, because we're going to drop them in a town. We're going to say we can influence them as well with our description of the town, right? Which again we'll cover when we're working on actual game sessions. But when we start to describe Sunnybrid as an environment, we'll mention the inn, we'll mention the market, and we'll mention the docks, and then we'll mention that near Upper Sunnybrid there's a garrison, and that there's a lot of commotion going on there because this takeover is happening. And you haven't like pigeonholed your players there. You haven't like railroaded them into a decision, but you've immediately pointed out like 4. That's a lot of like day one or for your first session, and even if especially if you're a new player, you've got 4 places there that you might want to go investigate. And we've also got a church, haven't we? So it's even more than that, right? But if we describe those 4 places as 4 places that we're prepared for them to go, again, this is D&D. They're probably going to want to go somewhere else. That's something we're going to have to deal with when it happens. But there's in all likelihood we're gonna have our players want to go to one of these places first, and we're gonna have some NPCs ready for them. So let's quickly bottom out these rulers first before we go to Sunnybrood, right? We've got a general who is a governess, right, for the city in the northwest. Have we got a name? Has anyone got a name for the city? A name for this general? And then also we have our liberal city to the northwest. I said that the other way around. Northeast, right? We've got these 2 cities to name and these 2 characters. But we're starting with these because we had this again last week. These characters are going to write themselves because of everything we've already established about our story. These 2 NPCs' characteristics are very much going to write themselves. We've decided that the governess of this city is a general, and that she's a royalist, right? She's for the monarchy. So we're going to mix all that up in a pot, and when we start to talk about her characteristics, she's going to be she's going to be conservative, right? She's going to be very conservative, and probably quite proper, right? And has disciplinarian vibes, right? Disciplinarian, right? If she's had a military background, she's probably going to be very rigid, That's a good word, right? Yeah, and we're trying to avoid using words that we're going to try and avoid using negatives and pejoratives and stuff, because again we want the question of who's right and who's wrong to always be ambiguous. So being rigid and conservative isn't a bad thing, right, in and of itself. We're definitely, as I said before, we're definitely going down this path of the monarchy being in the wrong, but that's up to us, right? Our players can decide anyway. Our players can decide for themselves. If they do decide for themselves they want to be royalists, then we can certainly it's very easy to make that transition where the conservative people are doing what's right for the people despite it maybe not feeling comfortable, and the liberals are just too out there, and they're going to run everything into the ground by not paying close enough attention to stuff and what have you. So again, going over old ground, but it's really important to, if we want to make our campaign feel like the players have their own agency, we don't want to thank you very much, Mighty Lancer, for popping in. It's been a blast. Thank you for your support. Yeah, so we don't want to pigeonhole our players. That's it. We don't want to railroad our players down a path, right? And that's I'm always going to try and soften the edges of characters that we're portraying as the bad guy, because we want all the options to be open to our players. And so our liberal ruler, General Hardcastle. We've got a name. Governess for the General Hardcastle. Love it. These names write themselves, right? We're we almost don't need to when we've described the situation to our players and then we give them the name General Hardcastle, we almost don't need to give a physical description of this general, right? They're very much gonna understand what's going on. And like as I said, like these things help our players. If we were running a campaign for veteran players, you'd maybe be a little less on the nose. But it's easier to make everything like overly obvious and then dial it back than it is for like someone who's a new DM to be given like less obvious names and then try and make it obvious for their players, right? So General Hardcastle, and then we have our liberal. What's the? I don't want to do this because it's like instantly got like negative connotations. But what's the name of the Emperor's son in Gladiator? The terribly vexed guy. I'm picturing him for some reason as this like Westberg, West, the city in the West. Love it. Westberg. Oh. There's an alternate plane of existence where that character's name is actually Veximus, and I'm digging it. Yeah, so Veximus, right? And that's a little in joke for us, right? Veximus, you know, he's a man of the, like, you know, we're writing this person to be a man of the people, but perhaps there can be that a lot of that is uh, self like a self diagnosis, right? Is this? I want everyone to vote on this. Do we really want Westburg and Eastshire to be our two cities? If we get a unanimous like verdict on it, then we're going with it. And I'm not directly opposed to it, but it's like just gonna wait for a response. But while I wait for a response, I'm gonna type Eastshire in here because I suspect this motion's gonna get passed. Garrison's on a river, right? Correct. I was about to type correct in the chat then. Yeah, why not? Correct. Correctus. You can get an idea of the delay there. If you heard when I pressed enter, then you'll like know how far behind everything is. It is on a river, yeah. And geographically speaking, if you look at the map, I need to scroll up for it because when I use this, I can like hover over stuff and you can see what I'm. This river, sorry, would obviously play quite an important role tactically, right? Whereas this one's more of a like annoyance. There's a lot of like bog, like a lot of marshland around it. This is just like a physical obstruction, whereas this river would actually be quite useful for like trade and stuff. Eastshire upon river name. Eastshire upon river name. We're going with that, but we're not calling the river name, right? I just wanna get that. If I get like one veto in episode, that's it, because I know what's coming next. So the military general we called General Hardcastle. General Hardcastle, and I wrote East Brush. Was it Eastshire? Yeah. Eastshire upon river name. Right. Let's get curdy, you know. Eastshire upon river name. And Westberg, lovely. Rivernin was up for debate. I feel like I've got to get ahead of this stuff because it's only an inevitability, right? We've got Eastburg, like Eastshire, Westberg, General Hardcastle. I like General Hardcastle. That's real tasty. Yeah. So again, we don't need to like. These characters are very much going to write themselves anyway. So if anyone asks any questions about them early doors, you're going to find it very easy to do which of these characters sends their mum a birthday card, right? Probably both of them. But which one writes love and which one writes from? Yeah, like we can answer a lot of these questions without having to have written it down beforehand. And a lot of DMing is like you want to be prepared, but try not to over prepare because the less you write down, the less you have to remember. And if you get yourself to a situation, we're trying to get ourselves to a situation where we're comfortable with like making things up on the fly, and just having like this like very little information about these two characters should hopefully put us in I feel pretty confident that I could make things up on the fly, and I believe in you. I think you could too. Kind of, if someone were to ask you questions, more specific questions about them, it'd be very easy to like make those up as you go, and rather than flicking through notes trying to find, the bit where you wrote down how does this person sign cards to their mother on Mother's Day, right? You can just make it up because you haven't thought of it before, and the answer that you give is going to be like pretty spot on. So we want to be a little bit more detailed with these characters because they're going to be very important for the start of our campaign. So we've got an innkeeper at Pumpkin Patch Inn, and I'd like to, as an additional note for all of these characters for Sunnybrid, is I'd like to establish their stance on our societal issue, right? As we've made that our central tension, let's immediately, because we want to confront our players immediately with that central tension, or like a bit of foreshadowing for it. The beliefs of our NPCs are going to be relevant to the early stages of gameplay. So we've got an innkeeper for the Pumpkin Patch Inn, and their stance. And don't forget, we can have neutral stances as well. So if anyone's got any feel free to just shout it out. Right? Let's stance. So we're looking for names, like temperaments. We've got careers for a lot of them, right? We're going to avoid physical appearance for now because it's not super relevant, right? But we do want a stance and like any like important attributes, right? With being with the human. It's a very good question. With being for the human god, so I'm assuming, like, obviously we're making an assumption there, but if he's named he's named his inn the Pumpkin Patch Inn, so we're gonna he's a we've decided he's a religious man, but he's an innkeeper, so maybe he's not always at church on Sunday morning. Right, but he's a firm believer. So maybe as a characteristic he's kind of flaky, right? He's got a lot of, like, he works in an inn. It's the family business. He's never really committed to anything in his life. He's just he always knew he was going to be the innkeeper. So he's like a bit flaky, a bit like unreliable, but he's all in all good bloke. We're going to put top bloke, right? And we've decided it's a man for some reason, but we're going to stick with that because We're there now. So let's have a look. So what did we decide about our human god? Right. Where are we? Up here somewhere. Oh yeah, gorgeous. Oh, brash, egotistical, naive. There's that polarity of like being vengeful and loving. That Ali Scarlet is has got a bright future in dungeon mastering because that's tasty. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, so it's like an overtly like the inn itself is like it's kind of like overtly pro monarch. Like we're gonna call them loyalist, right? Overtly loyalist. And then we've also just added a we're adding a staff member. So let's just have we're just going to have a. What do we want them to do? We want them to be like we just want them to be like a janitorial kind of like lad, you know. The lad who's just milling around like sweeping up broken glass and stuff. Who is a Republican. Let's get our vernacular down, right? We've got loyalists and Republicans, right? I guess. His dad opens. Reich Flair's portrait on 3 of the 4 walls. Overtly loyalist. Yeah, let's have like Reich Flair. 3 of the 4 walls. 3 of the 4 walls. Inn's got flags up everywhere. Equivalent typical London Beefeater souvenirs will be all over. Yeah, like it's just a like tacky royal memorabilia. Yeah. And maybe some of the locals aren't super happy about that because the people who are happy, the people who are excited about the Senate taking over are kind of like, you know, they think he's living in the past. But because he's a nice bloke, you know, he's a kind of like innkeeper that everyone can get on with. Maybe they don't say anything about it. It's just like, you know, Republican maybe because of IRL America. Well, I mean, America didn't come up with the term, did they? Like, maybe no, pardon. Republican. I don't know what else to call them, so you know. Republican. Yeah. Maybe his dad opens up after his son's had a few. Are we like? Is that reference? Are you suggesting that this lad is our innkeeper's son? Right. That's kind of the only standing comment that I don't really get. Maybe the royalists referred to them as Republican, but those in the know are the resistance. Yeah, like I'm not. I don't want being like opposed to the change doesn't necessarily mean that you're like gonna join the militia kind of thing. Like there needs to be a distinction between like there will be like a resistance that's like a totally distinct thing. Like if this guy's got portraits of the king up everywhere in his pub, that doesn't mean he's like gonna. That doesn't mean he's gonna take to the streets tomorrow to fight the Senate's soldiers and stuff. It just means that like Flaky innkeeper doesn't worry about how to open the inn if he has a chance for a good night with the boys. With the boys. Oh right, yes, you're not like the granddad. Like the his father has to come and bail him out sometimes. Yeah, he's that kind of like, not necessarily the most reliable Papa, Papa innkeeper has to pop down every now and again, even though he's officially retired. Yeah, I just got that backwards as well, like with reference to the resistance and stuff. Maybe the royalists refer to them as Republican, right? Those in the know of the resistance. Yeah. So that's immediately plenty of like information about our inn, right? So we've got like he's like this lad is a potential contact for party members. I can see this. I can see our innkeeper being like, drunk on the job kind of thing. Not drunk, but like he probably drinks while he works kind of thing. And like if you were to ask him for actual hard information about what's going on, he would just spout incoherently about how great the king is, and the king managed to conquer most of the world with his tactical genius and stuff and what have you. So like maybe he's not the most reliable source of information, right? His personal opinion on everything is founded in like conjecture. So if you want to get a better idea of what's actually going on in the town, you talk to the lad who's more of a Republican, right? And he can tell you what's what. So first mate, captain. How would our I feel like our fishermen would probably all be fairly similar, right? I'm gonna start like just chucking stuff down here, and if you wanna overrule me or whatever, or if you've got any specific ideas about any of these characters, just jump in. I feel like our fishermen, we're in quite an impoverished town, right? And there's probably not a lot of profit in being a fisherman. It's like a family trade that you probably do because there's like a social uh, demand for it, right? You would become a fisherman because the town relies on the fisherman, not because there's really a profitable future in it. So I feel like these guys are likely to be like pro Senate, right? If we've got better, like I get the apprehension about using the word Republican as well. So if anyone's got like a cool word that we can use, like chuck it in, right? So these guys just generally like are pretty like they're ready for the change. The currently they fish and sell. They sell what they catch just to the town, and there's not a lot of money to be made. And in a wider republic that's like better maintained and stuff, there might be more opportunity for them to trade to the closer cities and stuff, and they could actually become an asset to the republic and find themselves in a people lists. There's got to be like a cool. We could just make up a word, right? I'll keep thinking about it. You keep thinking about it. I can't. It's distracting me now. Something with the word Senate in it. Yeah, so I feel like these guys would be like all for the change. They have a potential to become an asset for everyone, not just the local area, and that should like give them more opportunity. Don't forget about our like seafaring elves as well, right? We have these like coastal opportunists that thrive off of disorder, right? And while the kingdom has historically been better for the people in that regard, they're like keeping them at bay. If they see the potential republic being more organised, that can only make their lives at sea easier, right? Let's clean up the coastlines, and so we have a sea captain, and he's kind of like, I guess if that's the case, then like he's kind of like a let's say he's like a tired, right, like a drawn out looking fella, or she, right, maiden, right, a tired, drawn out looking woman who's like, you know, there's that like the harsh soot, like the harsh sea air and stuff has like aged her, and just that constant like everything's a grind, right? They have to pull in such a massive fish just to feed the town, kind of thing, and like is a lot of weight on their shoulders that they shouldn't have, right? If they're like the main source of food for the town, she's felt an immense pressure just to make sure people aren't living in poverty, and it's not really her responsibility. But so then like she'd also be like she's generally quite selfless, right? I don't know how I'm camel casing this, but I can read every wave, right? Just like that kind of like not too kind of like campy, but like just that very like stereotypical, like overly stereotypical. Just everything's about the sea. Everything's a reference to the sea in some way, right? Like every reference is nautical, right? So like, but yeah, very selfless. Like, not, I wouldn't say warm, right? But like, there's kind of like, I might not know maths, but I know maths. I might not know maths. This is the kind of thing like I'd love to just have all these like on a card, and if you can write like 20 of them ahead of time, so you can just slip them in, like just like can really create like quite a comedic situation for your party, like when they meet them. And this is immediately going to be a character that your players love to interact with, which is always great. We want to establish once your players latch on to like an NPC early doors, you want to write more for that player that NPC and make them always be available, because like an NPC that your players trust is like an asset to a dungeon master, because you can use that to like subtly hint your players should go down a specific path. I think I like this quote, but it's too technical, right? Academic credentials, yeah. My school grades were fails, right? But at least I've got sales. I feel like determined to finish my sentence. Not warm, but like I kind of like it's like mentor, like a mentor, kind of like Dr. Coxey, kind of like, you know, deep down, like actually a very good mentor, but has no interest in like a personal relationship to go along with it, kind of thing. Like she ain't got time for making friends. She's got the entire weight of the world on her shoulders. and then you've got to balance it out with like a first mate who's like very agreeable, right? And then like kind of acts as like as a social translator for the captain. Like they just become like an interpreter, let's say. Because we don't want our players to just immediately be like, this captain's an abrasive dick, right? You have that like other character who's there to sort of be like, you know, she's like that for a reason. The first mate didn't get fails. I don't need no dragon's horde as long as I've got it starboard. I'm not writing these down anymore, and that's not because I don't think they're great. I'm gonna write this one down, but we're gonna come if we get all of these bottomed out right, and there's 10 minutes left. We're gonna come back and just write sea puns for this captain. There's a little treat for everyone if we can eat our vegetables. We'll come back and have more pudding, right? I don't need no dragon horde. As long as I've got sea at starboard. Cha-cha! Very good comments. Like it, yeah. But like, not necessarily books, like kind of like that kind of, definitely can read and reads, but that like street smart kind of like, just like more socially adept and like very good at adapting to situations kind of thing. More of a reader, but what did I just say? Like street smart kind of. Good in a pinch. That's how you become a first mate as well, right? We all know the first mate runs the ship. In reality, once you're out at sea, it's all on the first mate to keep everything in order. Random sailor. And then like we can be real vague with this guy, but you just want to have that like the random sailor's like you got him in the back pocket. You know, if there's a conversation that's happening between these other characters and you want to change the subject, you just have this like random generic sailor come in, but you want to have an idea of who they are before. So maybe something a little bit. Give them something to make them unique, right? Because that's always the danger when you're creating these like generic characters. You don't want them to just be like a grey faceless like zombie that comes in and says things for the DM's benefit, right? Give them some kind of backstory. So they've joined this like very socially aware fishing ship, right? So what motivation could they have to have joined? I guess we've kind of created like this vessel that's like seems to be like socially aware, and they're doing what they're doing not for riches, but just out of like a civic duty kind of thing. So maybe they're not. Maybe that's not them. Maybe they've been kind of forced into it by like a rescued at sea. Yeah, that's kind of a classic. Ooh. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Probably not. So I'll tell you what I'm thinking. What if this person's an elf? Right? Rescued at sea, you know. Random sailor. An elf. So like used to be a raider, and we've got that like tropey, no memory of how they became lost at sea. Pulled aboard by the captain, fed and clothed, right? And now they're just sort of doing the thing, right? And that's like, let's just leave that, because there's a potential like sinister like motive there, right? And the less we say about that, better, because like if we're talking about like a session 1 players meeting this, we don't need to have decided already whether this elf's going to suddenly kill everyone on board and steal ship, right? We can have that be, imagine like on your 30th session, and your players the captain of the ship and the crew of the ship have become like a point of contact for your players, who they frequently come and visit, and they just love this NPC, right? And it's where they go to like get information about what's going on in the town. And you turn around like and introduce this storyline where this elf's been like, playing them all along. Oh. So yeah, let's leave that like as an option kind of thing. It'd be very easy to like start to slip in suggestions that something might be like not right further down the line. But if we introduce them at first as just that classic, lost at sea kind of character, then there's plenty of room to develop the character down the line. So I'm pretty happy with that. So so the stance would be like kind of neutral, really. Like the for the elves, like the kingdom and the republic are just like one and the same, right? They'd kind of be amenable to what everyone else on board thinks, but like wouldn't have any strong opinions on it themselves. So we've got a dock master. So like I've got these like, so the dock master could be a position that's filled by the garrison to keep everything kind of in order and like keep all the ships coming and going like in accordance with the law, and paying the taxes and stuff when they dock. So I kind of see this being like a potentially like a loyalist character who is uncertain about whether I'm writing all this down. Let me know if you disagree. Let's expand on the idea if you've got any ideas. So like a loyalist, it's a position filled by the local garrison. Garrison, and this person is unsure. This person is unsure whether they're going to be replaced. So they're potentially quite bitter, right? Like probably talks often and loudly, right, about how good a job they've done, how good of a job they've done historically. Whether that's true or not is open for interpretation, right? But they just talk endlessly about how they've kept this dock running smoothly for 30 years, and his father before him kept this dock running smoothly, and the service they've paid to the kingdom all their life, and there's no indication as to whether they're even going to get replaced, but they're just, they've got a bee in their bonnet about it, right? Bee in their bonnet about the whole situation, right? And then you've just got that classic, like, curmudgeonly, like, really unhelpful character working in, like, a social service, right? You're supposed to be able to go to him and find where a ship's docked, but it takes like 15 minutes to walk through a conversation of porridge, right? because he doesn't want to help you until you've agreed that he does a good job first, right? So, cool. Merchant storekeeper, Jolly Jack's General Goods, Madja. Trying to rob, yeah, exactly. Just rabble rousing. Rabble rouser, for sure. We've got to band together and, you know, say no to the Senate if they're going to start firing us. And there's been no indication yet whatsoever whether his job's actually in jeopardy at all. But he's just decided that change is a bad thing. Merchant shop storekeeper, Jolly Jack's General Goods, Mad Jack. My answer's gone now, so the character's just like, he's called Jolly Jack's General Goods, and the character's called Mad Jack. So, is he jolly or is he mad, or is he both? Let's Jolly Jack's General Goods. Jolly Jack's General Goods. Oh, did not mean to do that. Ooh, boy howdy. Is he jolly? Or is he mad? He's mad jolly. Is he mad jolly or is he jolly mad? Right? Is he mad jolly? Or is he jolly mad? Right. Yeah, and like this is like, can I get some F's in chat for Munger? This character is going to be Munger, right? And nobody apart from me knows what that even means, unfortunately. But yeah, he's going to be like, we're gonna make this character just like an over the top kind of like Mad Hatter character. Irritating but endearing. If our characters are going to go to this general store frequently, right? We don't need this character we don't. Let's think about what I'm trying to say. There's a jingle in there somewhere. Yeah, there definitely is, and we will have one by the end of this series of streams. So, because this guy is going to be essential, it's going to be like intrinsic to the gameplay. The guy who runs the general goods store is going to be a part of the campaign regardless of what decisions the players make. We want him to be like totally neutral on the political like issue. We don't want our players to have to disagree with his political stance, because if they choose one direction or the other, we don't want that to mean they feel uncomfortable going to a general store to pick up health potions and that kind of thing. So, like, and you can go two ways with that. You can either make the general store owner a grey blob, right, that just dispenses crossbow bolts, right, or you can make him be a character in and of his own right that isn't relevant to the story. And I just want him to be like, with everyone else's permission, I guess, right? I just want him to be like a mad, like, crazy, the kind of guy who opens a store in a struggling town that sells crossbows. I mean, you've got to be a very special type of lunatic to want to serve people like that. Like, if you're serving adventurers, you're making friends with people who might not come back. You know, you could serve a group of people like a load of adventuring equipment so they can go and take on a band of goblins that are marauding nearby, and they never come back. So he's probably made a lot of friends. He's made a lot of friends who've never returned, right? At first I pitched him like the one-eyed Simpsons bloke who owns a weapon store. Yeah, like, what's he called? Is it like Herman or something? But yeah, he's kind of got that, like, he's a little bit more like somber, but he's definitely got that, like, he's a little bit of a lunatic. He's less endearing, I guess, but Hates seagulls. Oh god, yeah. Capitals though. Hates seagulls. Hates seagulls. Hates seagulls. Has seagulls. Right. Taxidermied seagulls throughout the shop. Not for sale. Herman. It's been a long time since I watched The Simpsons, but when I did watch The Simpsons, boy, howdy did I watch The Simpsons. And this guy's got to be as neutral as possible, right? For reasons previously discussed. Like, who cares who's in charge? As long as there's idiot adventurers who want to buy crossbows, yeah. That's why he has so many crossbows. Exactly. Yeah. It could. I do love silly D&D. For all of my desire to write serious stories, I love silly D&D. And maybe this guy, he describes all manner of weapons, weapon characteristics. He measures, what I'm trying to say. He measures all manner of weapon characteristics by their capacity to kill seagulls. Right. Like this crossbow will launch a bolt straight through 4 seagulls in a line. Or this battle axe is sharp enough to de-wing a seagull at 30 yards or whatever, right? Everything's just seagull related. There we go. I feel like that's suitably silly. Oh, you want the Seagull Hunter 5000, right? Just everything's like about his pure disdain for winged rats. Phyllis, Robbie B, take us away, please. Phyllis the Fishmonger. Can you throw me some characteristics of Phyllis the Fishmonger? She's your baby. She's your baby grandma, you know. I'm feeling grandma. You don't name someone Phyllis and not expect her to be a grandma, right? I'm going to add if you're very lucky, you might meet Calm Jill, right? The missus. Getting on a bit, yeah. Rickety. Getting on a bit. Yeah, she's the market stall. Not a fisherman, but she'd deal with fishermen. So maybe she's like one of these. She's kind of like a, you know, a soft old lady kind of thing. But boy howdy, if you give her sass, she's used to dealing with fishermen all day long, and she knows how to handle a bit. She knows how to handle a disrespectful young man kind of thing. She's got a barbed tongue when she wants to. Yeah. She's a don't spend it all at once type. She not a fisherman. She maybe she can't handle herself in a physical capacity, but she can handle herself in a. She can handle herself in a verbal altercation. She got that quick wit. How does she feel about the? How does she feel about the impending takeover? Maybe she's one of these, like, maybe she's too old to give a hoot, you know? She's like, it's all the same to her, you know? So she's not gonna live long enough for it to make a difference, kind of thing. Like, yeah, as long as she can, yeah, like, she's like, are the Senate gonna put more fish in the ocean? Otherwise, she's not interested. Fish don't care for politics, right? But she's like she'll believe it when she sees it type, you know. If she sees the change, then she's on board, but she's not like convinced that. Are any of our one thing we haven't covered is, like, you know, are any of these we've got an elf, but do any of these other characters stand out as like a different race to anyone, you know? Like, I've just got this green grocer, and I'm like, the first thing that popped into my head is like that kind of like stereotypical like halfling, you know, the Samwise Gamgee type, like farming, old gaffer, you know. Farmer Maggot, that's what I'm thinking of. Farmer Maggot's crops. So we've got a coastal town, and I think it should be geographically. It should be. This isn't prime farming land around the village, right? The informant. I'm all for that. Phyllis is Phyllis is an informant. This is a secret, right? This is going to be a secret. Our party to discover later in the story. Hell yeah. Yeah, woe indeed. Ali Scarlet raising the bar yet again. Yeah, so I feel like this. If we have like a greengrocer, there should perhaps be coming. There should perhaps be like a trading type that comes from a village in this area, right? So they're maybe not entirely local. They come from a smaller village. I'm not sure what that says about their temperament, perhaps. Just like quite an insular, I guess, right? Fairly like a fairly insular. Are we gonna have them be a different race, or do we want someone else to be? I feel like we should spatter a couple more different races about. Fairly insular from a village to the north, and they're perhaps don't concern themselves as much with don't concern themselves with local affairs or politics, but that kind of lends themselves to like their family tend towards being loyalists, right? Just because, you know, they're from out in the sticks. They're not really sure what's going on. Elven Priest. That's an interesting one because we've kind of got this like this is something I've like thought about, that we've got this idea of our elves being like kind of opportunistic, and I keep using the word like raiders and stuff, but we don't want them. I don't want to sell them as like evil kind of thing. So like, yeah, that might be a good way to ground the race again. So like, they're not murderers. They just sort of they have a different society, and just because they do get up to things that might be considered naughty up and down the coast, that's not necessarily a reflection of their their alignment, I guess. Incurable seasickness. Yeah, maybe that's the like. Yeah, so maybe we've got like a seasickness stricken elf that's that's land bound, right? And then like took to religion for answers because they'd like feel outcast, right? For like a connection. Yeah. Ooh. Let's just copy that. Yeah, so maybe they're not like. So maybe they're like. Maybe they're not like the priest, right? Maybe they're just sort of like. They're just like a clergyman. Clergyman, right? Knew that. It was obviously going to spell that wrong, wasn't I? Come on. Coal, greengrocer, fairly insular. Is there like I want a couple more characters that aren't like human. Some sort of maybe that like maybe Mad Jack's like a good opportunity to have like a different race, right? Definitely like a halfling or a gnome plays into that. Yeah, like so. Go back to that second. So our clergyman is standing in for the local priest, who's on a mission from God. It doesn't really matter, does it? This is a perfect example of like a something we don't necessarily need to mission of some kind, right? We don't like the players might ask and we can make it up on the spot. It doesn't really matter, right? But if they don't ask, then if they don't ask, then they give us an opportunity to decide later on if it becomes relevant. That's the king, yeah. So cool. We've got two elves. Yeah, so I'm thinking that Mad Jack could potentially be like a gnome or a halfling, because that kind of feels like it fits, just with the madness kind of thing. But like they're just in reality they're just like a playful and they're like kind of having everyone on. Yeah. Let's is halfling. Let's have him be a halfling, right? because we've got like a bit of a melting pot thing going on. I want to like. So what else have we got? So the green grocer. So the stance is like neutral with a neutral. Yeah, cool. With a lean towards loyal. Right. Not really like an active. Probably deep down prefers the kingdom to the market stall selling oddities. Just a good place to sell our NPCs like trash, right? It's always nice. A treasure map that leads nowhere, that kind of stuff. Right, this guy's a hustler, right? Or gal. This person's a hustler. Oh, can we have a turtle here? Does that like fit? I don't want to have too many like non-humans because we want the town to represent. We want all the NPCs to represent like the actual town, but like we've got these like quite amusing turtles, right? And I said like someone to sell your NPCs trash, but it could literally be like trash if it's a turtle, right? So yeah. So far behind. Yeah, so this guy's like respectful. Respectful, like small town mentality. Yeah, let's have yeah. Fairly roguish, tall, largely sells scrap, junk, doesn't mind handling hot products, right? Hot product. This can be our PC's fence early doors. As a side note, probably. So should we just name him now? There you go. I'm gonna get out ahead of that one because I feel like that's coming imminently. Right? He's called Cena. But we'll have an eye in there or something. Sienna. Yeah, this is a female, right? Sienna. Roguish female tall. PC's fence early doors. Yeah, as long as you're happy. I'm happy too. That sounded like I wasn't happy. I'm highly amused by all of this. But like and I feel like I'm starting to like pick up on like the ebb and the flow of where these conversations are going, which I'm also pretty happy about. PC's fence early doors, so it would generally have like I would imagine, has a good relationship with elves. Like if there are elves coming into town with like potentially stolen goods or like, I keep bumping into this idea that like I like the idea that our elves are like opportunists, right? And with that, they have that kind of attitude that like they wouldn't describe something as stolen, right? They're liberated kind of thing. But when they come into town with a liberated item, Sienna's a good contact for turning it into some cash quickly. So this turtle's got a good relationship with them, and stance-wise, they're probably like they probably also like don't really care. They don't really care for politics, right? But concerned that the takeover will result in like more organized policing and stuff, right? So they'd be like, they don't have like an actual political alignment, but they're not super happy about the takeover because like they think it might affect business. We've got Smuggler as well. That these two could almost Wanyola. God, Wanyola probably. Wanyola's got to be a human, right? Has to be a human. But like a good friend of Sienna. So the link is a permanent link to this document and works when the stream's not live. So you can if you like you can save the like a bookmark of the web address if that works for you, or it's actually possible if you come to my stream when I'm not on, it will still open the stream and it might be hosting someone else, or it'll just be like dead or whatever and play like an old video, but the chat's still there. Again, not a Twitch pro, but I think that's the case. You can still, because when I was testing this, I was typing stuff into my chat when I obviously wasn't streaming, and it still works. So if you lose it or whatever, you can still come to my chat and type it in there, and get the link again. So there you go. Good question with a reasonable answer, I think. Yeah. So I have no idea what I was just saying. I'm talking about Wan Solo being human. Probably be a good friend of Sienna, and I imagine Wanyola is not an accessible character, right? For the party arriving in Sunnybrid for the first time. If that makes sense. But if you make good friends with Sienna, and you know the right questions to ask, he could put you in touch with his smuggler friend, right? You're not gonna be able to just walk up to the smuggler and find him and be like, "Oh, dude, I hear you're a reprobate. Can you help me out with some stuff?" You know, he's a very secretive character. So then we've got that like classic character, a self preservationist, right? Like, is that kind of character that will screw the party over 3 or 4 times and will always somehow manage to convince them that he's not going to this time. Will screw our party over. An opportunity, but somehow convince them that this time it's on the straight and narrow. Just like a real, if you've got the coin, a real valuable ally to have. But you just got to be careful that a better price isn't available for turning you in, kind of thing. We've done our clergyman. We've decided our priest is out of town, which is great. Great bit. That's just quality DMing, you know, to just try and take a couple of things off of the table. Right, we've seen this massive list of NPCs, and we just go, can we get rid of one of them? Like, if you can, do it. Make your own life easier. Town drunk. Need I say more? Need I say more? Have we got a stance for the smuggler? Be quite interesting to, because we've got a lot of like neutral parties because they're, you know, perhaps like operate outside of the law, and like the default stance in that situation is to be neutral because you don't really care. It'd be quite interesting to have our smuggler be like strongly politically aligned despite being like a smuggler, right? So I'll let you decide what that affiliation is, but like there's a strong political agenda despite operating outside the law. Yeah, but like I'd like to go even deeper, right? That he doesn't just want the kingdom to stay the kingdom because like work's good now. Like it'd be cool to have him like genuinely actually have a horse in the race. Maybe just a naughty royalist. Like I don't mind which way it goes, right? We'll be able to justify it whichever way. Of the king. Are you going of the king? Is that what you are saying? Am I picking up what you're putting down? Naughty. Naughty royalist. Reichs, yeah. Love it. Yeah. Maybe, yes. Maybe there's a maybe we can go even deeper and have even though like he's a bastard or whatever. Maybe there's someone in the capital posing as this guy so that he can get up to no good. Space Mountain, that's the one. Right? Maybe there's just some like guy sat in like royal clothing, like in a manor house somewhere who's supposed to be this guy, but he's just a fill-in so that you can get up to no good about the kingdom, right? Not royalist. But then again, like, so this is the kind of thing we want to include as information for us, right? We know this, and there's absolutely no way our players would find this out for a long time. But it's like a really nice thing to have in the back of our minds to like sow seeds, so that if it ever comes to a point where we want this character's true identity to be revealed, like we've been working our magic and like dropping hints all the way through the campaign. An offspring of Reich. Somewhere there's a bit of a Gendry type, but roguish. Yeah. Yeah, maybe his mum's just like considered like a noble because she was put up in a real fancy house and given some land by the king to keep her mouth shut and stuff. So maybe he doesn't even know it, right? And also somewhere he doesn't know it. Maybe he's got his suspicions, but right. So maybe he doesn't. So maybe we don't need he doesn't have to have like a stand-in because his mother is a noble. Her mother's a landowner somewhere. after being paid for her silence, right? And like he's grown up, and Juan Solo's grown up fatherless, right? This is deep trope in this. Whew. Grown up fatherless, and it's just a reprobate. Textbook rogue, right? Is he the kind of guy who shoots first, you know? So yeah, so maybe he doesn't know, right? But obviously his mum does, and his mum is a landowner who's looked after by the king, and he's just grown up in a position of privilege that he knows is afforded to him by the kingdom, and like he's just real pro royalist because like he knows that there's some kind of like link between his family and the royal family, but like he doesn't really care for the politics of why, right? They just like he knows that the kingdom's positive because that's where his mum gets all the money that he spends on being a brat, basically. Yes, and then you've got this like so when the players first meet the character, he's just this like rogue, and you would expect him to be like either neutral or like his political opinions would only be based in what means there's less guards on the streets. But then he's actually like got this real strong political agenda, and maybe like uses his many talents to kind of like cause problems for the Republic, right? And Town Drunk. Town Drunk kind of writes himself, but if there's anything anyone wants to throw out there about our Town Drunk, I'm all ears because there's 100 ways to write a Town Drunk. Do we want them to be a human? Like, do we want to decide how they became a drunk? Like, what does everyone think about Town Drunk? Town Drunk's perhaps the most important character in a D&D starting town, aren't they? Because he's the only person. They're the only person in the town that you know for a fact you can get an honest answer out of. Because if you're offering them a couple of coin for a beer, they'll tell you anything you want to know. We've got this as well. So like again, like these characters kind of write themselves. Like obviously we have like a loyalist. We have a loyalist captain who's being phased out, and a like Republican captain who's being phased in, right? And they're just kind of like fairly generic. Another total Twister. Yeah, why not? Twister the Town Drunk. Twister the Town Drunk. Another total. You want another total? I mean, like the total character kind of fits. But then, like, yeah, I guess, like, oh yeah, I like that. Twister the Town Drunk. Total. Right. Everybody's got a different story. Everyone has a different origin story, right? The truth is, he's just drunk, right? He's just weak will drunk. It's fairly common for totals to not be employed, and you know, he just likes to stroll about. He just likes to stroll about drinking, and his stance on the whole change is like completely ignorant, right? He couldn't tell you if there's a king or not, right? He doesn't even know. He's just completely ignorant. He knows that there's a man on the back of the coins that he's after, but he doesn't know that that's the king. Just well, has anyone among you, have you not been entertained? Is we're not, that's not racism, is it? We're not just like related to, right? Though I guess Sienna wouldn't like you to know that. Oh, we've got that like dark storyline where like I like that, where she oh. Enabling his behaviour. She tried to help him. But wow, I love the little less pain. Whew. It's a real tearjerker. And yeah, and then these kind of like I really feel like, you know, you can make these up as and when players want to meet them, right? Because they're just like everything's going to be determined by their like job title. And yeah, I'm rushing a bit because we've gone over time, but that's fine. I don't want to keep you guys, you know. Strong. Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna have to do some more colour coding on this. But good hustle. Has anyone got any last, you know, addendums they want to add to our roster, our strong roster of NPCs that we now have available in our fantasy world? Because now's the time. But do not forget that the doc command will always give you access to this file, so you can look at it, you know, whenever the mood strikes you, and make notes, try and remember things to talk about next week, and we'll always start every week with a discussion about anything anyone wants to add, or even if it's just naming settlements or parties or anything. That's how we're going to start every week, just by like, it's quite a nice little show and tell kind of thing, you know. If anyone wants to like add any notes and stuff, like we can do that at the beginning of every week. Kind of how I see this going. So I'm just going to give it. I'm literally just talking, just to give it a few seconds to see if there's anything anyone wants to add. One thing I want to know is there is like I have added some like secret little commands in here that are for your entertainment value, right? I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I will be updating them like every week. But there's always going to be new commands that you can type and get interesting little things to pop up to try and make being in chat a little bit more interactive for those of you who are committed. Just by a way of showing my appreciation, you know, for you turning up every week. And I've not had any additional Space Mountain. Space Mountain's not one, and I'll tell you why. It's because I couldn't remember what it's called. So, but maybe it will be next week. Not really related to Sunnybridge, but there should be a town that's known as being a weird place, and all the NPCs are totally random. So DM rolls for encounters with a pool of NPCs. Should be a town that's known as being a weird place, and all of the NPCs are totally random. That sounds like a very entertaining session for the players, and an absolute nightmare for the dungeon master. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying that sounds horrible. Yeah, like, so you could, like, coming up with a silly amount of NPCs isn't difficult, right? You could do, like, if you were doing this on your own and you spent 2 hours on it, like, you just fly through it. And like when you're making large quantities of DMs, like you get even more tropey. You like we were talking about Simpsons earlier, like as a like good example. You could almost just make every Simpsons character a like NPC and just change the name. And like my cue cards, if you had like a cue card that had Marge Simpson on it and a random like fantasy name that you'd given her, it'd be very. You don't need to write anything with it because you would know how that character would play. Right? You'd be able to answer questions about the character, and the players might not know that you're actually answering questions about Marge Simpson. Yeah, players like we need to, and yeah, that guy just isn't there anymore. It sounds horrible. It might actually just be horrible for everyone involved, but that's not. That doesn't mean it is a negative. Like it'd be a negative experience. Like it'd be quite tempting to do that as like a not necessarily like a nightmare, but like a dream sequence type thing, right? Or like during like a character's like religious like visions or something like that. I like it's a really interesting idea, and I'm 100% going to use it somewhere. Just trying to think like where. Because I don't think I'd want players to be able to go there at will. But it'd be really interesting to just drop your players in that scenario and have them try and navigate it and try and work out how to get out when they can never rely on any person being in the same place like more than once. You just walk into like the general goods store and like the sea captain's in there, and you walk out and like the mayor's like stood at the fishmongers, and then like you go into the church and the town drunks just like stood at the altar. It'd be awful. Yeah, so great idea. But put a pin in that because it's definitely like that's definitely an encounter that I want to create for something. Yeah, so as per the usual, thank you all very much for coming. Oh, hang on. Yeah, let's. I'm getting well ahead of myself. So there is a. I nearly had a disaster. Okay. If you've got 5 more minutes to listen to me ramble incoherently, then great. I nearly had a disaster because I don't really know what's going on with Twitch. Like I'm sort of trying to work it out as I go, and your videos only exist for so long, apparently, and then they disappear. And I noticed that this was happening like 25 minutes before our session 0 video disappeared forever. And apparently, according to those reliable sources on forums on the internet, videos disappear forever. And I was able to download a copy of the video of my interview, like session 0 interview with Mike Brown, Mike Plus. I was able to download that just in time. So that is now available on a YouTube channel, which I haven't really done anything with, but it's a place where the video is hosted. So I know everyone who's active in chat probably watched that episode anyway, and I greatly appreciate all your support. But for anyone who's new, perhaps watching this for the first time, who wants to go back and and catch up to what's going on, I will be uploading all of the videos to YouTube now because I don't understand why they don't exist on Twitch forever. I know why Twitch don't want them to exist forever because they have to pay for servers and stuff. But now, see, when I said about rambling, this is what I was talking about. So there's now a YouTube where you can watch what streamers call VODs, I guess. videos on demand. I'll be uploading every episode every week to Twitch, which will be really weird to watch because there won't be a chat, but at the very least you'll be able to catch up with what's going on. So if this is your first time, head over to YouTube and you'll be able to catch up. And after that, when you're caught up, welcome. We stream every Sunday at 6 p.m, usually till 8 p.m. Sometimes we run over on Sundays and that's GMT, 6 p.m. GMT on Sundays. And next week, where are we going next week? I think now that we've got some NPCs, I would like to start getting into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of running sessions for D&D. How exciting is that? Gonna have some excitement from people in chat. Yeah, let's go mad. That's exciting, isn't it? So this has come around a lot quicker than I was expecting it to, but because of the focused way that we've started world building, we've very quickly arrived at we're nearly in a position where we can actually start to run sessions in the world we've created. I know we're all we've come a long way in the 3 sessions we've done, and I know people we're all starting to feel like we've actually got a good backdrop of a world, and because of the way we've wireframed everything, and I keep talking about this idea that you can fill in a lot of the gaps yourself because of the skeleton that we've made. There's nothing stopping us talking about sessions. So I do want to. I'm probably, because I don't think it's going to take that long. I think we need to very quickly talk about some physical characteristics of Sunnybrid, and the region surrounding Sunnybrid. But we've already got a map, and it's kind of going to write itself, sort of thing. The layout of the town is something we need to talk about, but that's not going to be that difficult to do. So we'll very quickly talk about characteristics of Sunnybrid, but that'll fit naturally into session planning. So what I want to do next week for session 4 is start to talk about session 0, which is a concept that I keep talking about, and I think is a very helpful topic to discuss for people who, whether you've DM'd before or not. Session 0 is quite an interesting topic to talk about. So next week's going to start off as a physical description of Sunnybrid, just to whet our palate, to get us warmed up, to get us in that creative mindset for world building, and then we're just going to have a back and forth discussion about a session 0 and all the things that will entail, because I think I go on. Session 0 is going to turn into a couple of episodes, I think, where we talk about all of the things that we can do in a session 0, because I would like to go into we're gonna plan a session 0 as though we're going to post one, and we're going to talk about physical handouts, and we're going to talk about writing a descriptive piece of text to introduce our players to the starting location and stuff. And I think the first thing we want to do is talk about session 0 as a whole, so that we're all on the same page about what we're expecting out of session 0, and then we can create a plan for what the following the following streams are going to be, which aspects of session 0. So we might have a stream that's just about creating a physical handout, and then another stream that's about the actual dynamics of hosting a group of players you maybe haven't met before, that kind of thing. So yeah, so next week's going to be an interesting one, and I look forward to it. Thanks as always to our new followers. We're very slowly climbing towards that exciting 50 number, so greatly appreciated. Cannot overstate how much I appreciate those of you who are active in chat. You make this worth doing, so I love to you all. much appreciated. And I look forward to next week, 6 p.m. I will see you there. Thank you all for coming.